2 weeks of travel through hyperspace felt like forever to the crew of the 3rd Battle Fleet. Every day, Commander Zhang Bora wondered what they would find when they reached the alien coordinates. Would there be a massive battle fleet waiting? For them, would they find only empty space and dead ships? Or would they really find aliens who needed their help? The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at exactly the right coordinates, and what they saw made everyone go completely silent. The alien colony ship was there just like the distress signal had said, but it was unlike anything any human had ever imagined. The ship was enormous, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It was easily 10 times the size of Sol's hammer and looked like it could carry millions of people. But something terrible had happened to it. The massive vessel was dark and broken with huge holes torn in its sides. Dr. Park Woo-jin, the science officer on Sol's hammer, stared at the alien ship through the main view screen. "My God," he whispered. "That thing is incredible. Look at the size of it. How many people do you think are still alive in there?" The alien ship did not look like human technology at all. Instead of metal and sharp edges, it had smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to glow with soft blue light. It looked more grown than built, like a massive living creature floating in space. But the beautiful design was ruined by obvious damage. Huge sections of the ship were completely dark with no lights or power. Multiple hull breaches leaked atmosphere into space, creating frozen clouds of gas around the vessel. Whatever had attacked this ship had been thorough and brutal, leaving it crippled and dying. Lieutenant Nam Subin at the communications station worked hard to establish contact with the alien ship. The translation computers had learned more of their language from the original distress signal, so communication was possible, but difficult. After several tries, a weak voice came through the speakers. The voice sounded tired and desperate, but also filled with sudden hope when they realized the human ships had really come to help them. The aliens called themselves the Keelan, and their situation was even worse than the humans had expected. The voice belonged to someone called Keeper Valon, who seemed to be one of the leaders of the colony ship. He explained that they had been traveling through space looking for a new home when raiders attacked them. Most of their people were dead, but about 50,000 survivors were trapped in the core sections of the ship. The Keelan ship's life support systems were failing, and they were running out of air and power. The survivors had been waiting to die when they detected the human fleet arriving. Keeper Valon could hardly believe that someone had actually heard their distress signal and come to help. Commander Zhang did not hesitate. She immediately ordered all ships to prepare for emergency evacuation procedures. Medical teams were told to get ready to treat alien patients, and cargo bays were cleared to hold refugees. The entire fleet shifted into rescue mode. The first challenge was getting inside the alien ship. The damage was so bad that normal docking was impossible. Human Marines in powered armor had to cut through twisted metal and collapsed corridors to reach the survivors. The work was dangerous because parts of the ship were still collapsing. Ensign Yoon Dae-sung was assigned to run continuous scans of the star system while the rescue operation was happening. Commander Zhang wanted to know if whoever had attacked the Keelan ship was still in the area. The last thing they needed was to be surprised by hostile forces while they were trying to save people. The first group of Keelan survivors was brought aboard Sol's hammer after 3 hours of cutting through debris. The aliens looked nothing like humans, but they were clearly intelligent people who had been through terrible suffering. They were tall and graceful with pale blue skin and large silver eyes that reflected light. The Keelan were weak from their ordeal, and many were injured, but they looked at their human rescuers with something like wonder. They touched the Marine's armor with gentle fingers as if they could not believe that help had actually come. They spoke in their own language, but the emotion in their voices was easy to understand. Dr. Park Woo-jin and his medical team worked frantically to treat the injured aliens. Human medicine was not designed for alien biology, but basic first aid seemed to work. The Keelan responded well to oxygen therapy, and human painkillers appeared to help their suffering. More rescue teams spread throughout the dying colony ship, searching for survivors. The Keelan had retreated to the most protected areas deep in the ship's core when the attack happened. These sections still had some power and air, but not for much longer. Captain Lee Jun-gi of the destroyer Incheon's Fury led one of the rescue teams deep into the alien ship. The corridors were filled with evidence of the attack, blast marks on the walls, broken equipment, and unfortunately, many bodies of Keelan who had not survived, but they also found living people. Families, huddled together in emergency shelters. Children who looked up at the human rescuers with those big silver eyes. Adults who cried with relief when they realized salvation had come. The rescue teams worked as fast as they could to bring everyone to safety. The work was exhausting and dangerous. Parts of the alien ship were unstable and could collapse at any time. The human Marines had to navigate through twisted passages and around dangerous electrical systems that sparked and flashed. The Keelan survivors helped as much as they could, guiding the humans through their ship. After 6 hours of continuous rescue operations, they had saved nearly 30,000 aliens. But there were still 20,000 more trapped in the lower sections of the ship, and those areas were the most damaged. Time was running out fast. That's when Ensign Yoon Dae-sung detected something on his long-range scanners. Ships were approaching the system. Fast ships that did not belong to Earth or the Keelan 8. Contacts moving in attack formation directly toward the rescue site. Commander Jang felt her blood turn cold when she heard the report. The attackers were coming back. They had probably been watching the system, waiting to see if anyone would respond to the Keelan distress signal. Now they were returning to finish what they had started. The human fleet was in a terrible position. Half their people were still inside the alien ship conducting rescue operations. They were loaded down with 30,000 refugees and more rescue teams working to save the rest. The ships were not ready for battle, and they could not run away without abandoning the people they had come to save. The approaching ships came out of hyperspace like hunters returning to check their trap. Commander Jang could see them on the tactical display. 8 dark, angular vessels that looked built for war and intimidation. They moved with the confidence of predators who had done this many times before. These had to be the raiders who had attacked the Keelan colony ship. The ones who had murdered millions of innocent people and left the survivors to die slowly in space. Now they were back to finish the job, and they had found human ships in their way. Captain Oh Sang-wook was the first to identify the hostile ships on his tactical display. Contact 8 ships incoming, and they are not responding to our communication attempts. Sir, I think these are the ones who attacked the Keelan ship, Commander. Jang looked at the alien families in her cargo bays and made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. She opened a communication channel to address the approaching raiders, not knowing what kind of response she would get, but knowing she had to try. The hostile ships emerged from hyperspace like sharks smelling blood in the water. Their dark angular hulls were covered with weapon ports and painted with symbols that looked like screaming skulls. These were not explorers or traders. These were predators built for violence and intimidation. Captain Oh Sang-wook studied the enemy formation on his tactical display from the bridge of Busan's Pride. The 8 ships had spread out to surround the human fleet in a classic attack pattern. Their movements were precise and coordinated, showing they had done this many times before. Commander Jang watched the enemy ships take position around her fleet. She had 30,000 Keelan refugees packed into her cargo bays, and 20,000 more still trapped on the dying colony ship. Half her Marines were still inside conducting rescue operations. Her ships were not ready for battle. The lead enemy ship was larger than the others and covered with even more weapons. It moved to the front of the formation like a pack leader, showing dominance. The hull was painted with fresh kill marks and battle trophies from previous raids. Lieutenant Nam Subin tried to establish communication with the hostile fleet, but got no response for several minutes. The enemy ships just continued their encirclement movement, taking their time like cats playing with trapped mice. They knew the humans could not escape. Finally, the lead ship sent a transmission, and the translation computers worked to convert it into human language. The voice that came through was harsh and mocking, filled with cruel amusement at finding humans interfering with their hunting. Humans, the alien voice said with obvious contempt. We are the Vrak Empire, and this system belongs to us now. You have interfered with our rightful hunt and stolen our prey. This will not be tolerated by the mighty Vrak forces. The transmission continued explaining that the Vrak had claimed the Keelan survivors as their property. The colony ship, and everyone on it belonged to them by right of conquest. If the humans surrendered the aliens immediately, they would be allowed to leave the system with their lives, Commander. Zhang felt sick as she listened to the Vrak demands. Through the Keelan, survivors they had already rescued the humans were learning the horrible truth about what had happened. The Vrak Empire was a collection of raiders and slavers who had been terrorizing this part of space for decades. The Keelan homeworld had been a peaceful place with billions of inhabitants living in harmony with nature. But the Vrak had come with their war fleets and destroyed everything. The planet was now a radioactive wasteland, and the Keelan people were scattered across space as refugees. Keeper Valan had explained through tears that the Vrak did not just kill people. They captured survivors and sold them as slaves to other worlds. Some aliens were kept for entertainment in gladiator fights. Others were hunted for sport on special worlds, built just for that purpose. The colony ship had been one of the last evacuation vessels to escape the destruction of the Keelan homeworld. It carried nearly 2 million people, including children, families, and the last of their civilization's knowledge. But the Vrak had tracked them across space like bloodhounds. The attack on the colony ship had been brutal and one-sided. The Keelan had no weapons and no way to fight back. They could only watch as the Vrak ships tore their vessel apart and killed most of their people. The survivors had hidden in the deepest parts of the ship waiting to die. Now the Vrak had returned expecting to collect their prizes. They wanted to take the remaining Keelan people to sell as slaves or use for entertainment. The idea of fighting for their victims had probably never occurred to them. Most civilized species would surrender rather than face the Vrak war machine, but the Vrak had never encountered humans before. They did not understand what they were dealing with when they threatened people under human protection. The concept of fighting a superior force to protect strangers was completely foreign to their way of thinking. Commander Zhang opened a communication channel to respond to the Vrak demands. Her voice was calm and steady, but everyone on the bridge could hear the steel underneath her words. "This is Commander Zhang Bora of the Earth Defense Force," she said clearly. "The Keelan people are under our protection now," she continued. "If you want them, you will have to go through us. We did not come this far and risk this much just to hand them over to murderers and slavers." The Vrak commander's response was immediate laughter that sounded like breaking glass echoing through the communication system. "Foolish humans," he said with obvious amusement. "Your tiny fleet cannot stop the might of the Vrak Empire. We have conquered over 100 worlds and enslaved countless species. You have exactly 10 minutes to surrender the prey and leave our territory," the Vrak commander continued. "If you refuse, we will destroy your ships and take the slaves anyway. Your deaths will serve as a warning to others who might think to interfere with Vrak." "Business, Commander." Yang looked around the bridge, at her officers. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also determination. The crew of Soul's Hammer had not come this far to abandon innocent people to slavers and murderers. They would rather die fighting than live with that shame captain's son. Mira's voice came over the communication system from Daegu's shield commander. "We are ready to follow your orders. My crew stands with you, whatever you decide." "We did not join the Space Force to run from bullies." Similar messages came from all the other ships in the fleet. Every captain and every crew member understood what was at stake. This was not just about saving the Keelan people anymore. This was about what kind of species humanity wanted to be. The Vrak Empire represented everything. Humans despised slavery, murder, and the strong preying on the weak. If Earth's fleet ran away now, they would be telling the galaxy that humans were cowards who abandoned others when things got dangerous. But fighting meant going up against 8 warships with superior numbers and unknown technology. The human fleet had been designed to fight other human ships, not alien vessels with different weapons and defenses. They had no idea what they were up against. Dr. Park Woo-jin was frantically analyzing the sensor data from the Vrak ships, trying to learn everything he could about their capabilities. The enemy vessels appeared to use energy weapons and some kind of shield technology, but the specifics were unclear. Ensign Yoon Dae-sung reported that more Vrak ships might be in the system, hiding behind planets or asteroids. This could be just the advance force with more reinforcements waiting to join the battle. Once it started, Commander Zhang made her decision and opened the channel. "To the Vrak fleet one more time." "Maybe not," she said quietly in response to their threats about her small fleet. "But we are going to try. The 10 minutes passed in tense preparation. Human ships powered up their weapons and shields while rescue teams worked frantically to get the last civilians off the dying Keelan colony ship. Everyone knew that once the shooting started, there would be no time for anything except survival. The Vrak commander seemed genuinely surprised that the humans had not surrendered. He had expected them to see reason and withdraw, rather than face certain death. But he was also pleased because destroying the human ships would send a clear message to other species about interfering with Vrak operations. When the deadline expired, the Vrak ships began moving into attack formation, their weapons charged with deadly energy, and their shields activated for battle. The human fleet spread out to meet them, knowing they were outgunned but determined to make the aliens pay dearly for every life. The space around the dying Keelan colony ship was about to become a battlefield, where two completely different philosophies would clash. The Vrak believed might made right, and the weak deserved whatever happened to them. The humans believed the strong should protect those who could not protect themselves. It was a fight that would determine not just the fate of 50,000 Keelan refugees, but the future relationship between humanity and the wider galaxy. The outcome would show every alien civilization what Earth's people were really made of when pushed to the limit. Captain Lee Hyun was having another boring day at the Deep Space Monitoring Station when everything changed. The coffee in his cup was still warm, and the morning reports were the same as always. Nothing happening in the empty space around Earth. The big screens showed stars and darkness like they had for the past 5 years since he started working. Here Park Soo-jin was sitting at her communication desk reading a book about ancient Earth history. She was the best signal officer on the station, but most days there was nothing to do. The space around Earth was quiet and peaceful, just the way everyone liked it after the last war ended. Then the computers started making noise. Loud beeping sounds filled the control room and red lights flashed on every screen. Park Soo-jin dropped her book and started typing fast on her keyboard. Her face went white as she read the information coming through. Captain Lee Hyun walked over to her desk and looked at the screen. The signal was coming from very far away. Beyond the edge of human space where no Earth ships had ever gone, the computers were trying to translate something, but the words were strange and foreign. "This is not human." "Park," Soo-jin said with a shaky voice. She kept typing, and more words appeared on the screen. "Help us, please. Our people are dying. We need rescue. Our ship is broken. We are lost in the dark between stars." The signal kept repeating the same message over and over, along with numbers that looked like coordinates. In space, Captain Lee Hyun had never seen anything like this before. In all his years in the Space Force, he had never heard from aliens. Everyone knew they might exist somewhere, but no one had ever made contact. The coordinates showed a location about 50 light-years away from Earth. That was very far even for the fastest human ships. It would take months to get there, and by that time whoever was calling for help would probably be dead. Captain Lee Hyun knew he had to report this to Earth Command right away. This was the most important thing that had ever happened in human history. First contact with alien life, and they were asking for help. The signal sounded desperate and scared. These were not invaders coming to attack Earth. These were people in trouble. Within 2 hours, the news reached Earth Command, and Admiral Kim Tae-ho was reading the report in his office. The old admiral had spent 40 years building the Earth space fleet. He had prepared for the day when aliens might come to attack Earth, but he never thought they would ask for help instead. Admiral Kim was a smart man who had fought in many battles. He knew that if aliens existed, then Earth needed to learn everything about them. A rescue mission could be the perfect way to meet them and find out what they were like. It could also show them that humans were good people who helped others. But there was a big problem. The alien ship was 50 light-years away. Even the fastest rescue ships would take months to get there. The aliens said they were dying, which meant time was running out. If Earth was going to help them, they needed to send something much faster and more powerful. Admiral Kim looked at the fleet reports on his desk. The third battle fleet was doing training exercises near the outer colonies. 12 big warships, including the flagship destroyer Seoul's Hammer. They had the newest jump drives that could cross space much faster than regular ships. They also had enough weapons to fight a small war. The battle fleet could reach the alien coordinates in just 2 weeks instead of months. That would give the aliens a much better chance of surviving until help arrived. But sending warships instead of rescue ships was a big risk. What if the aliens thought Earth was attacking them? What if this was some kind of trap commander? Choi Min-ho came into the office with more reports about the alien signal. The translation computers had figured out more of their language. The aliens called themselves the Keelan, and they said they were refugees running away from their home planet. Something had attacked them and destroyed most of their people. The message painted a picture of a huge colony ship carrying millions of aliens across space looking for a new home. But the ship was badly damaged and most of the people on it were already dead. The survivors were trapped in the center sections, slowly running out of air and power. Admiral Kim made his decision. Send the fleet, he told Commander Choi, but keep all weapons ready. We are going to save them, but we are not going there without protection. This could be the most important mission in human history. The orders went out immediately to the 3rd Battle Fleet Commander, Jang Bo-ra. She was one of the youngest fleet commanders in Earth history, but she had proven herself in the asteroid wars. She was smart, brave, and careful, exactly what this mission needed. Commander Jang received the orders while her fleet was practicing attack formations near the mining colonies. The message was marked with the highest security codes. When she read it, she could hardly believe what she was seeing. First contact with alien life, and they wanted her fleet to handle it. She called her captains together for an emergency meeting and explained the situation. The alien distress signal had been confirmed as real, and Earth Command wanted them to attempt a rescue mission 50 light-years from home. It would be dangerous, and they had no idea what they would find when they got there. Captain Oh Sang-wook of the destroyer Busan's Pride was the first to speak. This could be a trap, he said. What if these aliens are pretending to need help so they can attack us when we get close? We should be very careful. About this, Captain Sun Mira of the cruiser, Daegu's Shield, disagreed. If they really need help and we do nothing, then millions of people might die. We have the fastest ships in the fleet. We are the only ones who can get there in time to save them. The debate went on for an hour, but in the end all the captains agreed. They would go to help the aliens. It was the right thing to do, and it was what humans did when someone asked for help. Even if that someone was from another world, the fleet prepared. To leave immediately, supplies were loaded, weapons were checked, and jump drives were powered up. The 12 warships of the 3rd Battle Fleet would make the longest journey in human history to answer a cry for help from the Star's Commander Jang. Stood on the bridge of Seoul's Hammer and looked out at the other ships in her fleet. Each one carried 500 of the best-trained Space Force personnel in the galaxy. They were ready to fight if necessary, but they hoped they would only need to rescue. The jump to hyperspace was smooth and the fleet disappeared from normal space, heading toward coordinates where aliens waited for help that might never come. But Commander Jang was determined to prove them wrong. Humanity had heard their call and humanity was coming. The battle began when the Vrak heavy cruiser Bloodmaw opened fire on the human formation. The alien ship unleashed streams of red plasma energy that lit up the darkness of space like deadly fireworks. The Vrak expected their first attack to cripple or destroy at least one human vessel, but Captain Lee Joon-gi of the destroyer Incheon's Fury was ready for them. He had positioned his ship to absorb the first attack, while his weapons officer Ensign Han Mi-young prepared their response. Human ships were built differently than alien vessels, and the Vrak were about to learn why. The plasma bolt struck Incheon's Fury head-on, but the human ship's armor was designed to handle kinetic impacts and high-energy weapons. The damage was serious, but not critical. The ship shook violently but remained in fighting condition. Ensign Han Mi-young did not wait for orders. She opened fire with everything Incheon's Fury had to offer. The ship's main railgun launched a solid projectile at incredible speed while fusion missiles streaked toward the Vrak cruiser. Human weapons were different from what the aliens expected. Where the Vrak used energy beams and plasma bolts, humans preferred kinetic weapons that relied on mass and velocity. The railgun projectile hit the Vrak ship like a meteor, punching through their energy shields and tearing a massive hole in their hull. Armor direct hit. Ensign Han Mi-young shouted from her weapons console. Their forward shields are completely down, and we have hull breaches on their port side. They were not expecting that kind of damage from our weapons. The Vrak cruiser staggered under the impact, but quickly returned fire along with 3 other ships in their formation. The space around the human fleet, filled with deadly energy beams and plasma bolts that turned the darkness into a light show of destruction. Captain Osang-wook in Busan's Pride maneuvered his ship to avoid the worst of the enemy fire while targeting the smaller wrack vessels. His tactical officer had identified what looked like their command ship, a large angular vessel covered with communication arrays. The human destroyers were smaller and faster than the wrack ships, allowing them to dance around the enemy formation, like fighters avoiding a slower opponent. But the alien vessels had heavier weapons and better shields, making every hit potentially deadly. Commander Jang coordinated the battle from Seoul's Hammer, while keeping her flagship between the wrack fleet and the helpless Keelan colony ship. She could not afford to focus entirely on combat, because 20,000 aliens were still trapped inside the dying vessel. The rescue teams led by Lieutenant Colonel Park Hyo-jin were working frantically to evacuate the remaining Keelan survivors while the battle raged around them. Human Marines in powered armor cut through twisted metal and carried unconscious aliens to safety, one by one. Every few minutes, Commander Jang received updates from the rescue teams about their progress. They had saved 15,000 more people, but the colony ship's life support was failing faster than expected. The remaining survivors had maybe 2 hours of air left. The battle turned into a deadly dance among the stars, with human ships using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the heavier wrack vessels, while landing precise strikes on vulnerable points. The aliens adapted quickly, but their tactics were designed for overwhelming weaker opponents. Captain Sun Mira of the cruiser Daegu's shield led a flanking attack on the wrack formation. Her ship swept around the enemy's left side while they were focused on Seoul's Hammer. The human cruiser's weapons found weak points in the alien ship's rear armor. The wrack were experienced fighters, but they had never faced opponents who fought with such determination to protect others. Most species would have retreated by now, rather than risk their own destruction for the sake of strangers. But humans seemed willing to die for people they had never met. The turning point came when Lieutenant Colonel Park Hyo-jin made a desperate decision. His fighter squadron was supposed to provide cover for the rescue operation, but the battle was not going well. 3. Human ships were badly damaged and the wrack were pressing their attack park. Hyo-jin led his 12 fighters in a suicide run against the wrack command ship. The small human craft were like wasps attacking a giant, but their weapons were designed to punch through heavy armor. The fighters streaked toward the enemy flagship, dodging defensive fire. Most of Park Hyo-jin's squadron was destroyed in the attack, but they succeeded in crippling the wrack command ship. Their missiles found the enemy vessel's engines and disabled its main weapons. The large ship began drifting helplessly, while secondary explosions rocked its hull. With their command ship disabled, the wrack formation began to fall apart without central coordination. 3 of their vessels had been destroyed outright and 2 more were heavily damaged. The remaining ships started pulling back to regroup for another attack. But Commander Jang knew this was not a retreat. The wrack were regrouping for one final desperate assault. She could see it in their formation as they gathered together for a concentrated attack. They had decided that if they could not capture the Keelan survivors, they would destroy everyone. The damaged wrack ships still had enough firepower to overwhelm the human fleet if they coordinated their attack properly. Commander Jang realized she had to make a choice between protecting her own ships and protecting the alien refugees still trapped on the colony ship. She chose the refugees without hesitation. "Attention all ships," she broadcast to her fleet. "Form defensive formation around the Keelan colony ship. We will not let them destroy the people we came to save, even if it costs us everything." The human ships moved into position around the dying alien vessel, creating a protective wall of metal and weapons between the wrack fleet and their intended victims. It was a desperate move that left the human formation vulnerable to concentrated fire. Chief Petty Officer Im Jong-soo on Seoul's Hammer watched the tactical display with growing concern. "Ma'am," he said to Commander Jang, "we cannot take that kind of punishment for very long. Our armor will not hold against 8 ships firing at once." Commander Jang looked at the refugee families huddled in her cargo bays through the internal cameras. She saw Keelan children clinging to their parents and adults who looked at their human rescuers with hope and trust in their silver eyes. "It does not have to hold forever," she replied quietly. Just long, enough for our people to finish the evacuation. The rescue teams have almost everyone out of that ship. We just need to buy them a little more time. The final Vrak assault came with everything they had left. 5 damaged but still dangerous warships converged on the human defensive formation like a closing fist. Their commander had decided to make an example of the humans who dared interfere with Vrak operations. Commander Jang ordered Sol's hammer to take position directly in front of the heaviest enemy fire. Her flagship would serve as a shield for the other ships and the colony vessel, even though it meant certain destruction for her own crew. The next 20 minutes were the longest in the lives of every person in the human fleet. Sol's hammer absorbed hit after hit from Vrak plasma weapons. Her armor glowed white-hot under the sustained bombardment and her hull began to buckle from the stress. But the flagship held position, never wavering in its protection of the refugee ship, while the other human vessels closed in from all sides like the jaws of a trap. The Vrak had concentrated their fire on one target, leaving themselves exposed to counterattack. Captain Sun Mira led the final assault on the remaining Vrak ships. Her damaged cruiser still had enough firepower to make a difference, and she was determined to make every shot count. The human fleet struck back with everything they had. One by one, the Vrak ships fell silent and drifted away. Their hulls cracked, open like broken eggs. Their crews were dead or dying, and their weapons could no longer threaten anyone. The space around the Keelan colony ship was filled with the debris of a dozen destroyed vessels. When the last Vrak ship exploded in a brief star, a fusion fire the human fleet had won. But the cost was terrible. Sol's hammer was barely functional. 3 other ships needed major repairs, and they had lost over 200 crew members in the fighting. The rescue teams finally brought out the last group of Keelan survivors just as the battle ended. All 50,000 refugees were now safe aboard human ships, but the colony vessel that had been their home for so long was finally dying. As the immediate crisis passed, Commander Jang realized that everything had changed. The human fleet had not just won a battle, they had announced to the galaxy that Earth would fight to protect the innocent, no matter what the cost. 5 years had passed since the Battle of the Keelan colony, and the galaxy was a very different place. The story of humanity's rescue mission had spread to every corner of known space, creating ripples that were still growing stronger with each passing month. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood in his new office overlooking the bustling spaceport on Luna, where ships from dozens of different worlds arrived daily. The old man had lived to see humanity become a major power in galactic politics. Something he never could have imagined when he first joined the Space Force. The transformation had been remarkable. Earth now hosted embassies from 47 different alien civilizations, and trade agreements brought new technologies and resources that improved life for everyone. Human colonies had been established on 12 new worlds with more planned every year. But the most important change was not economic or political. It was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that humans were different from other species in ways that mattered. They did not seek conquest for its own sake or profit from the suffering of others. The Vrak Empire had learned this lesson the hard way. After the destruction of their raider squadron, they had gathered a revenge fleet of over 100 ships to attack human space. But they found Earth's allies waiting for them instead of helpless victims. The Second Battle of Keelan, fought in Earth's outer colonies, had been a disaster for the Vrak. 23 different species had sent ships to fight alongside humanity, creating the largest allied fleet in galactic history. The Vrak war machine that had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades was broken in a single day. Commander Jang, now Admiral Jang, had led that battle from the bridge of her new flagship, the heavy cruiser Keelan's Hope. The ship had been built using technology shared by their alien allies and crewed by both humans and refugees who had found new homes in human space. The victory had consequences that echoed across the galaxy. Dozens of worlds that had suffered under Vrak oppression declared their independence, knowing that Earth's fleet would support them. Species that had been enslaved for generations were suddenly free to rebuild their civilizations. President Yang Sun-mi had been re-elected twice on a platform of galactic cooperation and defense of the innocent. Her administration had created the Terran Protection Pact, an alliance of species committed to preventing genocide and slavery anywhere in known space. The pact now included over 60 worlds and was growing every month. New members brought their own technologies, cultures, and perspectives, creating a rich tapestry of cooperation that benefited everyone. Each species contributed what they could to the common defense. The Keelan refugees had become full citizens of Earth and the human colonies. Their biotechnology had revolutionized human medicine, extending lifespans and eliminating many diseases. Their agricultural techniques had ended hunger on worlds that had struggled to feed their populations. But perhaps more importantly, they had brought a new perspective on what civilization could be. The Keelan valued art philosophy and the preservation of knowledge in ways that complemented human innovation and drive for exploration. Keeper Valon had lived to see his people not just survive, but thrive in their new homes. He had died peacefully at the age of 250, surrounded by both Keelan and human friends. His funeral had been attended by representatives from across the galaxy. The memorial service had become a celebration of what could be achieved when different species worked together for the common good. Children who were half human and half Keelan played in the gardens, while their parents discussed plans for new colonies and exploration missions. Dr. Park Woo-jin had become the director of the Galactic Medical Research Institute, where teams of human and alien scientists worked to develop treatments that could help any species. They had made breakthroughs that would have taken centuries for any one civilization to achieve alone. The military cooperation was equally impressive. Human tactics combined with alien technology had created new weapons and defenses that made the Allied fleet nearly invincible. Pirates and raiders who had once terrorized trade routes now avoided systems under Terran Protection Pact control. Captain Sun Mira commanded the new 5th Exploration Fleet, which was mapping unknown regions of space and making contact with previously isolated civilizations. Every new species they encountered was offered the choice of joining the Alliance or simply establishing peaceful relations. The exploration missions had discovered wonders beyond imagination. Ancient ruins left by long-dead civilizations contained technologies that pushed the boundaries of scientific knowledge. Living worlds with ecosystems unlike anything on Earth provided new insights into the possibilities of life. But they had also found horrors. Worlds stripped bare by resource extraction, species driven to extinction by slavery and warfare. Entire star systems turned into graveyards by conflicts that could have been prevented if someone had been willing to intervene. Each discovery reinforced humanity's commitment to their original promise that no distress signal would go unanswered. The Terran Protection Pact had grown into something larger than anyone had originally envisioned. A force for peace and justice in a galaxy that had known too much suffering. The economic benefits of the Alliance were staggering. Trade between member worlds had created prosperity that lifted entire civilizations out of poverty. Technologies shared freely between species had solved problems that had plagued some worlds for millennia. Human entertainment had become popular across the galaxy. Movies, books, and music from Earth were translated into dozens of languages and adapted for alien audiences. The concept of heroes who fought to protect others resonated with species who had never encountered such stories. Alien arts and philosophy had enriched human culture. In return, Earth's universities now taught courses in xenobiology, galactic history, and interspecies relations. Children grew up learning about the diversity of intelligent life and the importance of cooperation. The transformation was not without challenges. Some human groups worried about losing their identity in the larger galactic community. A few alien species remained suspicious of human motives, wondering if the protection offered today might become domination tomorrow. But these concerns were outweighed by the evidence of what the Alliance had achieved. Slavery had been virtually eliminated from Terran Protection Pact. Space wars between member species had ended through diplomatic intervention rather than military conquest. The Vrak Empire still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self, reduced to a handful of systems and constantly watching for Terran patrol fleets. The former terror of the Outer Rim had been forced to change its ways or face complete destruction. New challenges emerged as the Alliance grew. Disputes between member species required careful mediation. Resource allocation across dozens of worlds demanded complex negotiations. Some civilizations wanted to expand faster than others could accommodate. Admiral Jang found herself dealing with these problems daily from her headquarters on the planet New Keelan. where the first mixed human and alien colony had been established, the world had become a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. The children born on New Keelan grew up speaking multiple languages and learning about dozens of different cultures. They played games that combined human and alien traditions and dreamed of careers that would have been impossible before first contact. As the 10th anniversary of the Battle of the Keelan colony approached, preparations began for a galaxy-wide celebration. Representatives from every member world would gather on Earth to commemorate the moment when everything changed. The celebration would honor not just the human crew members who had answered a distress call, but all the species who had chosen cooperation over conflict. The memorial would remind future generations that the greatest victories were won, not through conquest, but through sacrifice for others. Looking back, Admiral Kim realized that the distress signal that had started everything was not just a call for help. It was an invitation to become something better than humanity had ever been before. An opportunity to prove that intelligence and compassion could triumph over fear and hatred. The galaxy had sent aliens a distress signal and received Earth's Warfleet in response. But what Earth had really sent was a message that would echo through the stars for generations to come. The message that no one who asked for help would ever be abandoned. The silence after the battle was almost as overwhelming as the noise during the fighting. Commander Jang stood on the bridge of Sol's Hammer, looking out at the debris field that had once been the Vrak Raider fleet. Her ship was badly damaged, but still functional, and more importantly, they had saved every single Keelan refugee. Dr. Park Woo-jin worked frantically in the medical bay, treating both human and alien wounded. The Keelan refugees were weak from their ordeal, but they were alive and safe. The human crew members who had been injured in the battle were receiving the best care possible. Captain Oh Sang-wook reported from Busan's Pride that his ship had suffered moderate damage but could still fight if necessary. The other vessels in the fleet were in various states of repair, but none had been completely destroyed. The human fleet had paid a high price, but they had achieved their mission. Lieutenant Colonel Park Hyo-jin was among the casualties. His fighter had been destroyed in the attack on the Vrak command ship, but he had managed to eject and was recovered by a rescue shuttle. He was injured, but alive, and already asking when he could return to duty. The Keelan survivors were amazed by what they had witnessed. They had never seen any species fight so hard to protect others who were not their own people. The concept of risking everything for strangers was completely foreign to most galactic civilizations. Keeper Valon, the elderly Keelan leader, made his way to the bridge of Sol's Hammer with help from human medical staff. His injuries were serious, but he insisted on speaking with Commander Jang personally to express his people's gratitude, why he asked in the halting human language he had learned from the rescue workers. His voice was weak but filled with wonder. Why did your people risk so much for strangers? We are not your species. We cannot offer you anything in return for this sacrifice. Commander Jang looked at the old alien whose silver eyes reflected the light from the bridge displays. She thought about her answer for a long moment because she knew it was important, not just for Keeper Valon, but for the future relationship between their peoples, because it was the right thing to do. She finally said, speaking slowly, so the translation computers could keep up. And because no one should have to face the darkness alone. When someone calls for help, the only decent response is to answer that call, Keeper. Valon touched her hand with fingers that trembled from exhaustion and injury. The gesture was gentle and somehow conveyed more gratitude than any words could express. He had lived for over 200 years but had never encountered anything like human compassion. The news of what had happened began spreading across known space even before the human fleet started the journey home. The Vrak Empire had been one of the most feared military forces in the Outer Rim, and humanity had just destroyed an entire raider squadron to protect alien refugees. Other civilizations received reports of the battle with disbelief and wonder. A young species called humanity had appeared from nowhere and defeated the Vrak in open combat. More importantly, they had done it not for conquest or profit, but simply to protect people who had asked for help. The galactic communication networks carried the story from world to world faster than any ship could travel. Within days, every major civilization knew about the Battle of the Keelan colony, and the species that had turned a rescue mission into a declaration of war against slavery. Some alien governments were frightened by the implications. If humans were willing to fight the Vrak to protect strangers, what would they do to defend their own territory? Others saw opportunity in forming alliances with a species that seemed to value honor and protection of the innocent. Back on Earth, Admiral Kim Tae-ho received regular reports from the returning fleet about their encounter with both the Keelan refugees and the Vrak raiders. The implications were staggering. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy, and they had already made both friends and enemies. The Keelan survivors had shared their knowledge of galactic civilization with their human rescuers. The galaxy was full of different species with various levels of technology and social development. Trade routes connected hundreds of worlds, and political alliances shifted constantly. The Vrak Empire controlled dozens of star systems through fear and military might. They had enslaved entire civilizations and reduced once proud worlds to sources of raw materials and slave labor. The destruction of one raider squadron would certainly not end their reign of terror, but it would send a message that the Vrak were not invincible. Other species who had suffered under their oppression might find the courage to resist alliance with humanity, could provide the military support needed to fight back against the slavers' president. Yang Sun-mi called an emergency session of the Earth Council to discuss the implications of first contact. The representatives of every nation on Earth gathered to hear Admiral Kim's report about the battle and the refugees who were now returning to human space. The Keelan people had been given a choice about their future. They could settle on Earth or any of the colony worlds. They could try to find other surviving members of their species scattered across the galaxy. Or they could work with humanity to rebuild their civilization. Most chose to stay near their human rescuers, establishing colonies in the solar system, where they could be protected while sharing their advanced technology. The Keelan had biotechnology that was centuries ahead of human science, including medical techniques that could extend human lifespans. The cultural exchange worked both ways. The Keelan learned about human concepts like democracy and individual rights, while humans discovered alien philosophy and art that expanded their understanding of what intelligent life could achieve. Keeper Valon became Earth's first alien ambassador, working to build bridges between humanity and the wider galactic community. He established a communication network that allowed Earth to make contact with other civilizations who were interested in peaceful relations, but the victory came with consequences. The Vrak Empire was furious about the destruction of their raider squadron and the loss of 50,000 potential slaves. Intelligence reports suggested they were gathering a larger fleet to strike back at both Earth and any world that harbored Keelan refugees. Admiral Kim knew that one battle did not win a war. The human fleet had proven they could fight alien technology, but the Vrak had hundreds of ships and controlled dozens of star systems. If they decided to invade human space in force, Earth would need allies to survive. The Keelan refugees provided valuable intelligence about Vrak military capabilities and tactics. They had witnessed the destruction of their homeworld and knew how the Empire operated. The information they shared helped Earth prepare for the larger conflict that was surely coming. Commander Jang and her surviving crew were hailed as heroes when they returned to Earth, but she knew the real test was still ahead. The Battle of the Keelan colony had been just the beginning of humanity's involvement in galactic politics. The message they had sent was clear: humanity would fight to protect the innocent no matter what the cost. Other species could choose to be allies or enemies, but they could not ignore the new power that had emerged from the small blue world. 3 months after the battle, construction began on new shipyards and training facilities. Earth's entire industrial capacity was being converted to military production, because everyone understood that the next Vrak attack would not be 8 ships, but 80 or 800. The Keelan refugees worked alongside human engineers to design new weapons and defenses that combined the best of both technologies. The fusion of human engineering and alien science created ships that were faster, stronger, and more dangerous than anything either species could build. Alone, young people from every nation on Earth volunteered for military service, inspired by the story of the fleet that had crossed 50 light years to answer a cry for help. The Space Force expanded rapidly as humanity prepared to defend not just their own world, but anyone who asked for protection. Other alien civilizations watched these preparations with growing interest. Some sent secret diplomatic missions to Earth to discuss possible alliances. Others began their own military buildups, expecting the conflict between humanity and the Vrak Empire to spread across the galaxy. The Keelan colony ships that had survived the destruction of their homeworld began arriving in human space, carrying more refugees and survivors. Each group brought new stories of Vrak brutality and new reasons for humanity to stand firm against the Empire's expansion. Children who had been born on the dying colony ship grew up on Earth learning both human and Keelan cultures. They became living symbols of what could be achieved when different species worked together for the common good. Commander Zhang was promoted to Admiral and given command of the new 4th Battle Fleet. Her mission was to patrol the border regions looking for more Vrak activity and offering protection to any species that requested help. The rescue mission that had started with a simple distress signal had grown into something much larger. A promise that humanity would never again allow the strong to prey upon the weak without consequence. As the 1-year anniversary of the Battle of the Keelan colony approached, memorials were built on Earth and the Keelan colonies to honor those who had died fighting for others. The names of every human crew member killed in the battle were inscribed in stone alongside Keelan symbols representing their gratitude. But the most important memorial was not made of stone or metal. It was the promise that humanity had made to the